Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I want to talk to you about setup. I want this to be your setup 101, and I might actually make that a little playlist, my 101 playlist of all things detailing different aspects of the golf swing or the golf game. So today I want to cover a pitch shot. I'm not going to go into setup with a chip shot, but certainly a pitch shot. Then we're going to talk about a 7-iron. Then we're going to talk about fairway wood setup and then driver setup. This should give you a one-stop shop for tapping into all of your needs for setup. First things first, the pitch. Now, one of the best things that I ever heard on Sky Sports from one of the analysts, and I'm going to give him a shout out, good old Ewan Murray. And it was so profound and some of the best advice I'd heard on the channel was at the Scottish Open, and I remember it vividly because it's a standout comment. Tommy Fleetwood was on the tee, and Ewan said one of the best things that any amateur golfer can do is copy the setups of the great players of the game. We are so content or so adamant in pushing ourselves forwards, in swinging the golf club the way whoever your favourite golfer is, that we forget about the start point. You know, you go down the range and you got your bag on your shoulders, you got your 100 balls in your bucket, and then you pass a golfer. He hasn't hit a shot yet. He's standing there about to hit it, and you see him out the corner of your eye, or her out the corner of your eye, and oh crikey, he's going to hit a good one. You walk past and you're straining your neck because you want to hit him, see him hit. You knew he was going to hit a good shot because you could see the way he stood to the golf ball. You wouldn't see it stand and watch a guy or girl that stood like this, but someone that looks athletic, dynamic. You stand and you feel he's going to hit a good shot. Therefore, setup is king. You know from watching the golf on the TV that the good players stand to it appropriately. Let's go through the components that make up a good setup. And I remember I was thinking, driving in this morning actually, in the PGA manual, it was aim, grip, stance, posture, ball alignment, some order, and you had to remember that. Aim came before grip. Grip should have been top of the pile. But anyway, there was still a process, a procedure of detailing setup. I don't think I've really seen too much in the way of information out there that really details the setup. Let's start off with the hold. Now the hold, I'm not going to go into, but I just want to label it as, without doubt, bar none, warts and all, the most influential, if you haven't worked it out by now, the most influential part of any golf swing change. In inverted commas, in bold italics, in large font, grip is the most important part of your golf game. If you have not spent 80% of your search engine on YouTube on the grip, you're doing your game an injustice. So check out my grip series because that will detail the grip. So I'm going to glaze over that because I can't do a grip justice in the short time we've got in this video. I'm then going to go to posture. Now posture is an important one for me, and how we get the shape of the back. The shape of the back for me wants to be an S curve. That's how the resting position of the spine. I'm going to show you a little drill how to get that. To give you a good idea of how to feel the structure of your back, if you just grab yourself a wall, plenty of those around, put the base of your spine on it, put the thoracic spine on it, and then touch it with your head
Those 3 points of contact, we're trying to line up. Now you're trying to look forwards with your eye line. Keeping your backside on the wall, now try to keep those 3 lines lined up. Flex your knees. And now you have yourself, your back in the orientation we're looking for. To give you an idea of the lumbar spine, if you're able to slide your hand in, a reasonable idea is, or gauge is, using the knuckle of your middle finger as the point of reference that makes the base of your spine in its resting state. You want to engage your core when you're doing that, and you're looking to keep that shape. TPI is a little bit more flat back. They encourage that. I'm a pull check guy. I much prefer an S-curve with the spine. So that's a great little drill just to give you an idea of how you want to feel the shape of your spine.
Now we've talked through how to attain that S-curve and how to feel it in that simple drill against the wall. We want to now attain that back position, and the way I want you to reference that back position is at address, is that I want to make the club shaft relative to the spine as close to 90 degrees as possible at address. When I set up to the golf ball, this club shaft to my spine wants to be as close to 90 as possible. Don't want the handle to be risen up here, and invariably the spine will sit too straight. I normally see this orientation, the spine to the club shaft, where the club shaft almost points up through the neck. I very rarely see the handle too low and the shaft and the spine too bent over. I'm always looking for that relationship of the shaft to the spine at 90 degrees, whether you're using a 50-degree wedge, which is what I've got in my hands here, or a driver, which we'll come on to in a moment. We've got the grip sorted through the grip series, check that out. We've got the back drill, nice and straight, and we now have an orientation of the spine and the shaft. Now, I've got that spine and shaft aligned up. Now what I want to do is make sure that my forearms are reasonably aligned. What I tend to see, again, this comes down to poor grip alignment. I tend to see more right arms too much on top. So in the video that you can see from down the line there, my left arm is poking out the bottom, which changes the way my shoulders and forearms sit. If you lift your golf club up and you take your hold, you should be able to lay a club shaft over your forearms when you take the grip, if I can get it to stay there. So when I set up to the golf ball, if I lift the golf club up, you can see how I can get that club shaft to stay there. If I lift my right arm up, you can see that the club shaft points to the floor. That's a good little drill, gripping the golf club, lifting the club up in front of you and getting your forearms lined up with your shoulders. Then you can tip down to the golf ball, attain that forearm alignment. But as I say, if your grip's in good orientation, it will tend to have a better forearm alignment before you even get going anyway. Then I want to talk about the pressure through your feet. For me, I like to see 60% bias towards the back, the heels, compared to the toes. If you were going to play a tug of war, the last thing you would do is start on the toes of your feet in an effort to pull on the cord, on the rope, should I say. So therefore, if the golf club is trying to pull you in that direction at address, it's early, it's 7:15, my apologies. If the club's going to try and pull you in that direction, you better make sure that you've got some sort of center ground to give you a bit of a pushback, ready for that force of the club moving in that direction. So therefore, this fallacy that we need to stand to it like we're going to catch a football is poor, because the football is pushing me in this direction, which is why you'd want to be on the toes of your feet. So we want to be heel bias. When I then set up to the golf ball, I'm now sat a little bit more into my heels. I feel my glutes fire up a little bit more and gives me a better balance. But not only that, it also makes me feel way more comfortable in this orientation of the club shaft to the spine at 90 degrees. As soon as I go onto the toes of my feet and I attain that club shaft and spine at 90 degrees, it makes me feel too top heavy because the handle is too much underneath me. If you've seen my recent video on You Need This Drill, I talk about two TheraBand drills, a blue one and a red one. The blue one at address is creating force down through the handle. Therefore, when I create that 90-degree orientation between the club shaft and the spine, that pressure at address pushing down can now be facilitated because the handle's now underneath my shoulders. As soon as I stand too upright, because I've got the pressure too much on the toes of my feet, now the handle is too much out in front of me and I can't create force down underneath my chest. Therefore, push the weight back, get the spine and the shaft at 90, now I can create some force down into my handle. Now as I move the handle away, now I can create the force in the handle to make that golf club behave appropriately. So we've touched on the grip, touched on the spine, how we get that straight. Now we've talked about the orientation of the shaft to the spine. Then we want to talk about the foot pressure, done that. That's from heel to toe. Then we want to get you 60-40 left foot, 55, 60, 40 left foot bias. Now you can do that by standing on two scales. So get yourself two bathroom scales, put one under your right foot, put one under your left foot. I'll do a video on this. When you stand on them, you should be able to get 50-50 position distribution of weight on either foot. When you set up to the golf ball, then just start to balance up the scales a little bit more onto your left foot, so you've got a little bit more pressure down your left foot to start with. That'll make you feel a bit more left-sided, just fractionally. Then we've dealt with the heel and the toe, the left foot, right foot. Now I want to talk about the orientation of the handle. The handle moving forwards and being opposite the inside of the left leg now creates a straight line down through the left arm and the club shaft. That straight line down between the left arm and the club shaft makes that left shoulder go from tipping down to tipping up. And as the left shoulder tips up, we want that left hip to move forwards as well. And so we've got that straight line down through the left arm and the club shaft, which now sets that little bit of shaft lean at address. Then we want to talk about making sure that the ball position's in the right spot. If the ball position is in the wrong spot, it makes the low point just that little bit more tricky to manage, but also it changes the path line, the attack angle, the ball flight, the spin rate. It's important. So therefore, you need to appreciate what region, because it is not one spot, it is a region that you can have the golf ball in. For me, I never like to see the ball back of centre for any shot that's a stock shot. And I'd go as far as to say that I'd like to see it ever so slightly further forwards of centre. Therefore, there's my sternum, and you can see the golf ball sits left of my sternum, and this is a 50-degree wedge. If I keep the handle in the same spot and I move the ball further forwards, you're able to see that the handle can be in the same spot, but yet the shaft lean changes. I now keep the handle in the same spot and I keep the pressures through my feet the same. You can see that the shaft lean at address is dictated by the ball position. Therefore, with a pitching wedge, we want to make sure that the ball is ever so slightly forwards of centre. What that allows you to do is move onto it with your top half, because you would never play any sport with the ball back of your sternum. If you were to play a tennis shot, the ball's here, you'd be playing it out in front of you. If you were kicking a football, you'd be kicking it out in front of you. If you were playing baseball, you'd be hitting it out in front of you. At no point would you ever play anything back of your centre line. Therefore, if you're playing it back of your centre line, it compromises the dynamics you're going to use to generate energy and force and speed. So be careful. If you're moving the ball back in your stance, it's because it is trying to make up the shortfall of something else. So when you put the ball in the position that I'm prescribing here, and then you start hitting it fat, you need to look elsewhere. It's not the setup's fault, it's your golf swing's fault. Let's move on to the 7-iron. Now we've got the 7-iron. And really what's going to change is just the ball position. I'm still going to keep the orientation of the spine to the club shaft at 90 degrees, but now I've bumped the golf ball a little bit further forwards. The region for the golf ball is anything forwards of centre for a pitching wedge and all the way up to the left toe, the pinky. But depending on what attack angle, path line and shape of shot you'll see in the sky, this ball position with it will either feel good to you or feel bad to you. I'm just prescribing it where it should be if everything's lined up nicely. So again, all of the same distribution, 60 left, 60 back, 60 left in the left foot, 60 into the heels of the foot, 90 degrees between shaft and spine. The only thing I haven't mentioned is foot width or stance width. The width of stance should be intuitive. The longer the golf club, the more speed you're trying to create, therefore the more pressure in the ground that you're going to try and create. The wider the stance, the more pressure you can create. The fallacy that a wide stance reduces your opportunity to rotate is poppycock. I can still rotate my body with a wide stance. I can still rotate my body with a narrow stance. It's just the force and pressure that we can exert on the ground to make that happen, if you're doing it right, changes, goes up or goes down. Feet closer together, I've got less lateral force on the floor because my feet, when they're at an angle, I can create more lateral force that pushes against the handle that makes me rotate. As soon as I put my feet underneath my shoulders, I can only create vertical force. Well, that's okay, but we've got some lateral force in there that creates the rotation. So a narrow stance really knocks that away. As soon as I go a little bit wider, got more lateral, I go too wide, I can definitely create more lateral, but it actually starts to prohibit me. So just play with the width of stance. Don't go too far outside that corridor of what you tend to see the best players in the world, which is shoulder width, maybe a fraction wider. So again, club shaft length forwards, that butt of the golf club is in my in the pad of my is in the left leg, the left thigh. Left hip is forwards, nice straight line. Now when you look at the spine angle, because it's tipped backwards because the hip is forwards, I'm trying to get my head and my neck to match that line if you can. What you wouldn't want to do is argue with that line and tip the eye line to the left. A good little drill is to stick a pencil in your mouth and get it horizontal out to match the floor, or if anything, just try to get the left end of the pencil to line up. Then all of a sudden you've got your neck, your spine all lined up, hip further forwards, shaft lean further forwards, and now you've got yourself in a good set position. So that's the 7-iron. Now we move on to the 3-wood, and what I'm going to do is, after I've gone up to the driver, it's a slightly longer video today, but I think it's worth it. And you'll notice the longer videos are on the setup, the basics, those principles, which are massive. Then I'm going to hit a shot with all of them, and then you can see how it should look. Now the ball goes a little bit further forwards even still. Handle's in the same spot, but now because the ball is further forwards, now I look way less in terms of shaft lean. You can see the handle's in the right spot. Shaft lean has increased because the ball's moved back. That's where the pitching wedge was. But now I move the ball further forwards. Now the hip's further forwards, is forward still, left shoulder's back, in line with the hip, spine's back, handle's forwards. But again, I'm seeing less shaft lean here. So that's the 3-wood. Now we're on to the driver. Ball's further forwards again. Again, you should have noticed with all of these clubs, the spine angle to the club shaft are at 90 degrees. Now I've got rid of all of the shaft lean, but the handle's in the same spot. The ball's further forwards, pressures in my feet are exactly the same. It's very much a mirror image, or it's progressively evolving the spine angle. Because the shaft's getting slightly longer, I'm less over it than I was at the start, but the relationship of the shaft to the spine is exactly the same. Foot pressures are the same, the width of stance has got slightly wider, grip's the same, handle's in the same orientation, but the ball position is roaming further forwards. So here we are with the driver. Therefore, the key components to a good setup, let's go from the ground up. The pressure through the feet wants to be 60% heel bias, wants to be 60% left foot bias. Then we think about the ball position. The ball should never be back of the sternum. Wants to be forwards of the sternum, even for a pitching wedge, just a stock shot. Speciality shots is slightly different. Then as we go up, we talk about the grip. The grip is important. Check out my grip series. Then we think about the orientation of the shaft to the spine. Shaft to the spine is 90 degrees. Then get the handle forwards inside the left leg so that we get a nice, with the pitching wedge and the ball central, we get a nice line down through the left arm and the club shaft. And then when we go up further through the back, keeping that back nice and straight, getting that S bend for me, and then we're thinking about getting the head and the neck to line up through that neck and through the upper spine, the thoracic spine. Keep the grip pressure light, don't get too tight. As I've spoken to people before in a previous video, the grip pressure is very much reflected in the orientation of the grip. If the grip's weak, you'll tend to have a tight hold because you're trying to fight the face back to square. You have a strong hold. You could equally still be a strong hold, I mean a strong grip in its orientation. You could still have a tight grip, but that's because you're trying to hold the face open. But if you understand how our attack angle works, it will create more lag. Check out my lag video. It will generate more downstrike, and that will make the face point less left. But generally, we see strong holds with light grip pressures, weak grips with tight grip pressures. So hopefully, that's given you an insight into the various setup ingredients of all of the golf clubs. Let me now just go through and hit a shot with each club. Let me tell you, that was the first 4 shots of the day, and they came out pretty good. Every squirrel finds a nut sometimes. Well, hopefully, my friends, that's good coaching. You've enjoyed this Setup 101. If you've liked it, do hit the like button. Do share and subscribe while you're here. I want to keep bringing you the content that you deserve to make your golf the best it can be. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.